Excellent. Hello, everybody. Welcome to AI. What did we call it in the end? How to use AI for your marketing as coaches, I think, is pretty much the summary of it. I think I probably got AI to write it. So just for lols, I think I did actually get AI to write the copy for it all just to see what came out. I figured it was only right as for an AI event. Um, so what we're going to do, I've got a couple of bits to I was going to roll through in terms of just a couple of slides as sort of discussion points to kick us off. I've then got a number of tools that I'm using that I thought I could sort of show you how I'm using them and give you some examples because you may not have seen those tools in action. A couple of them you do have to pay for. So this is your chance to have a look at it without having to stump up the cash. And then we can do questions. So if you've got questions, do just shout them out as we go or pop them in the chat. Don't worry if you can't be on camera or you need to mute or for a bit, whatever. I don't mind. It's all good. So yes, it looks like from the chat that quite a few of you have had to go with ChatGPT, which is good. So I think just to sort of start us off, we should, I guess, really define what I guess AI is in the sense. So AI, this is the third time I think that AI has been the next big thing. It keeps coming back. It's always going to be the next big thing, but this time it really feels like it's here. And I think there's a concept that I think I hear sometimes, which is like AI stands for artificial intelligence, and people say, well, it's not artificial and it's not intelligent, and I get that. And I get that if for people who've not used it and are still sort of, hiding in their wardrobe, hoping it goes away, that kind of makes sense. But AI is artificial in the sense that it was made by itself. So AI made itself. It isn't made by humans, hence artificial. It's not artificial in the sense that it's physically made of things, but the code in which it uses isn't written by humans, it's written by itself. I've done a video all about how that works, and we can dive into that if people want to dive into that. But if not, I will ping you a link to a video I made all about how that actually works. In terms of intelligence, I think it's worth bearing in mind that AI has a level of intelligence that humans could never match, in the sense that in the information age in which we live, there's a fascination with knowing things and learning things. And AI has learnt everything and knows everything. What it does with that is still in progress. But the fact it has access to everything is really interesting. And by everything, I mean it's got access to the internet and you have access to the internet, but it can find stuff that it's got from the internet way quicker than a human can. So in that sense, it's intelligence, if we look at it just from a kind of strictly volume point of view, it knows more than humans can ever know, which is, I guess, why it is intelligent. Now, the output in which we see AI being used, or the interface with which we can talk to AI, has only very recently become something that, shall we say, humans can use. Previously, it was code, it was developers, it was using a back-end connection into these databases, and it was all very non-human facing. But now there's fun, sexy interfaces. You can make pictures of squirrels that are made up of trees, that are made up of nuts, that are, I mean, you can get it to do fun, silly things. And because of that, humans have started to get really interested in it, and people who aren't developers have started to get interested. So this is why I think this time round, when people say it's going to be the next big thing, I think it really is, because this time people can play with it and they can have fun with it. So realistically, AI is, previously people just used to use AI to mean something quite clever, but AI does have a very specific definition, and that is a specific bit of computer science that enables machines to think and act in a more human way by taking information from its surroundings and deciding on what it responds to based on what it learns and has understood. And that is very different to, I've made a clever bit of code that can go over here and do a thing. So when humans make computers, they say, I want to tell the difference between a 3 and an 8. So we can see the difference between the number 3 and the number 8 visually ourselves, very clever. And we can program computers to understand numbers, but they're not looking at the numbers. They've just been told that this chunk of code means 3 and this chunk of code means 8. So if I ask you for a 3, don't give me half an 8, because that's not right. And we've taught the tip with code. And if we look at computer code, we can unpack that code and go, yeah, that's how that works. That's how we got from this input to that output. What you can do with AI is you can say, well, what if we didn't teach it the code, the number 3 and the number 8, right? What if we got it to look at a number and decide whether it was a 3 or an 8, like humans do? That's quite a different idea. So that's what we've done with essentially an AI is doing. Rather than cheating and using computer code, it's actually trying to determine the answer to the problem using what it's learned from its surroundings. So there's a lot of AI that's already being used under the hood, and it's being used for years and years and years. The first one is social feeds, and this is something I think that is really under-recognized. So Instagram is the big one. So AI powers what happens underneath the Instagram feed. If you've ever seen The Social Network, there's a scene where there's like the 3 people who are deciding what you see. And that is essentially a visual representation of what AI is doing. So AI gets rewarded when it does something right. So when you stop asking it questions on ChatGPT, it gets rewarded because it's got the right answer because you've stopped asking it to refine it. So it goes, yay, I was rewarded. If you give it the wrong answer, it gets punished. And it's purely like points. It just gets points or doesn't get points. And that's how you train an AI. So with Instagram and things like that, you get this massive feed of content that's always interacting. Now, the AI doesn't know or care what's in the block of pixels it's showing you, but it knows that certain combinations of pixels seem to get people to keep moving their finger across the screen. And every time it gets you to move your finger across the screen and then stop, it gets more points. That's all it cares about. And it's doing this trillions of times a second across all these devices. If it can get the right combination that gets you to pick up your phone once you've put it down, then it gets more points. If it can get you to do one more scroll before you close the app, it gets more points. So AI is already manipulating what we do in our everyday lives to an extent that we can't even imagine. It is weaponized dopamine, as I've heard it described before, and it is alarmingly good at it. If you go to screen time on your iPhone and look at how many times you unlock your phone a day, make sure you sit down before you do that. It is utterly terrifying. The average person unlocks their phone 70 times a day. And what do? 70 times you unlock it? I would say probably my 3/4 of that is just checking Instagram. It's amazing. Or TikTok, that's even worse. So the other thing that's less, shall we say, horrible is getting directions. Google Maps is unbelievably good at getting you from where you want to be. If you've ever done a long car journey with Google Maps, it can save you hours. It's an amazing bit of kit, and that is massively AI powered. Again, it's using millions of data points. It uses real-time phone data from O2, Vodafone, and EE in the UK. So all of your data, as your phone moves past different phone masts, all of that data is sold by the phone networks as data in real time to companies who do mapping data, and Google is one of those people. So it's learning all the time and adjusting, and that's how it can be so smart. Translation is another one that's really clever, and it's been going on for years, but people have never really called it AI powered because I think it had a bit of a stigma to it when it first started. Google Translate's a good one. There's a tool I'll show you later, which is a really good translation tool, and that is AI powered. Dictation apps is another good one. So I use Descript a lot for editing video, and when you film your video, it transcribes your what you've said, and the first thing you do is you start listening to the video. And what do? I correct everything it's got wrong. So what am I doing? I'm training the AI. If you've used otter.ai, it's even got AI in the name, you're doing exactly the same thing. Every time you press on that word and correct it, you're teaching it, you got this wrong. This is what's right. So dictation and translation are both really great ways of learning language. The other thing that Google did years ago is they bought a load of call center script recordings. So when you pick up the phone, it says this call is being recorded for training purposes. What it means is AI training purposes. Those recordings are amazing because the person on the other end of the phone is reading a script. So you've got loads of different accents, loads of different dialects, loads of different stress levels, trying to read the same words off the screen every single call, all day, every day. What you say in response, they're not interested in, because that's not useful. But what is really useful is, a room of 1,000 people saying the same thing 50 times a day. It's an amazing data. So Google used that to initially train a load of speech models, which is really interesting. And then the other one, which is really interesting, is the people also purchased on Amazon. If you've ever seen that, that's all that word there. The phrase has been made by a marketing department. Those people didn't also purchase that. This is the highest profit margin thing. We think we can get you to add to your basket based on what we know about what you are doing with your life. So if you've got the Amazon, I don't know if you might have the Amazon toolbar installed. Some people may have done. If you ever did the Amazon Smile thing where you donate a section, basically that is just tracking all of your internet traffic. So every website you go to gets fed back to Amazon. It's all in the terms and conditions, which you read, and therefore it learns all about your browser history. And then let's say you go to Google and you type in best washing machine, whatever, and you go to a blog, and on that blog it's got like little Amazon product snippets. That's just telling Amazon that you're interested in a washing machine. So all of that data comes back in, it's fed to your profile, it builds up this big model. Anyway, that's some AI stuff. And of course, the other one, let me just show you this screen. This will, of course, be amusing to some of you. Remember these little text things that popped up? So please, can you tell me what it says in this box? That was training visual AI. And of course, these Google things are also training driving cars. So we've been training AI for a long time. So that text capture, they call them, in doing that, humans managed to optically scan and translate the entire Library of Congress. So we did a good job. We helped AI get all of that done. But what that means is that AI now has access to the entire Library of Congress. So that is our equivalent of the British Library, essentially. So every book published with an ISBN number is in that library. So when I say it's got access to everything, I really mean it's got access to everything. The driving vehicles is interesting because learning contextualization of object recognition is really difficult. So driving, we won't get into too much with the driving. It's top level nerding, but it's really fascinating. Those road signs are less like a really obvious version, but I had one the other day and it was like boats on trailers. I was like, that is specific. Not just a boat, but on a so they had a boat in a driveway, not on a trailer, but on the road I was like, oof, wow. And what that means is, this is why I find this really interesting, because me clicking that is teaching a self-driving vehicle somewhere that's a boat on a trailer. But it's not just teaching one vehicle, it's teaching all of them. So when one thing, so like people say, oh yeah, so I mean, so self-driving cars are better than human drivers every single time. And the reason for that is because if a self-driving car drives into a tree, it goes, trees don't move. I won't do that again. But not just that car, all cars. If someone walks out of the road unexpectedly, he goes, woof, I need to watch out for that, but not just me, all of the cars. So this mesh learning is really, really interesting. And having driven a lot recently, I think I could definitely do with a few more of these self-driving cars. Anyway, let's not get into driving. So Anybody got any questions or thoughts that have come up for them during that mini rant? Yes, Ray, go for it.
Yeah, just a simple question. What
Mm.
the word algorithm, is that like a subset of the AI world?
So algorithm, I think, is kind of used interchangeably with AI and with normal code, if we call it that. So the thing with normal code is that the way it works is often a linear process, and the algorithm is a way of filtering or defining how that works. AI wouldn't typically use an algorithm in the sense that it's the algorithm is maybe how you test the AI. So you would say, if I give you this algorithm, I want this input and that output, how would you give me the answer? You could use that to test an AI, but the way the AI comes up with the answer in the middle isn't algorithmical. I don't know if that's the word.
I've heard people say, oh, can you like this because the algorithm likes that, or something.
Yes. So stuff used to run on algorithms when it was coded by humans.
Oh,
In terms of social feeds, none of them are run by humans anymore. But nobody knows what comes up on the feed, why it comes up, what order. There is not a human alive who can tell you.
Wow.
Anybody who says they can is lying, even if they work at Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. They don't know because the code that is within those systems hasn't been coded by humans. It's just.
And that shift is quite recent?
I'd say on Google search, it's probably been the last five-ish years. LinkedIn has probably only been a couple of years. Instagram has been since the beginning.
There have been incidences where Facebook, I don't know, were accused of tampering with the algorithm to alter what people could get. So that hasn't been happening for quite a while.
They can penalize the AI for showing certain things. And that's all they mean, is they'll just adjust the slider to say, in this very specific instance, we do not want you to show this kind of content. Okay. But remember that ultimately companies like that don't care what's on the feed. There's no financial interest in them controlling the feed. In fact, the more bad stuff that's on the feed, the better, because it brings people to the platform to be angry about it. And what they really like is when people get angry about it, because then you stay on the app for ages, shouting into the void. But ultimately, yeah, it's a bit of a weird business model. But I think algorithm is probably an outdated term. I would say I'm seeing algorithm less and less. You can definitely still buy some $99 courses out there on how to make the best of the algorithm, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a good question, Ray. I like that. It's an interesting one. Yeah, John Paul.
Kind of similar thing. Some real life practical example. So one of my friends started a Facebook group for dancers, and they just, like, some people got that, and a load of people I know just didn't get it. Didn't feed on their feeds. No one could find it. Even you had to really actively search on it, and it kind of shows what the algorithm's doing. Well, not the algorithm, the AI is doing, is that it's kind of going with what it already knows. It's not very good at novelty because it doesn't fit into what it already knows. And I think it kind of has blind spots, and we don't know what those blind spots are. But there is a danger that AI kind of just averages everything out, and that if you want to be unique to stand out, but by being unique, the AI doesn't understand it. And I think that that's something that it's important to be aware of, because you can disappear very easily when there's AI kind of filtering the feeds. And it's like, how do you get that balancing act to show up so it understands what it is without being too, I think it's interesting going on, but it's all going on behind the scenes. So we just don't know until something works or it doesn't work.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think an interesting shift is occurring in the sense that these curated feeds, shall we say, so LinkedIn being a prime example, the LinkedIn is a feed that most people don't really think about, in the sense that you log on and you just see people on the feed. You don't really think anything about it. But if you think, like, I've got a couple of thousand connections, I don't see a post from a lot of those people. And that's simply because it's just showing me more of what I like. And it's exactly right, John Paul. It's just saying, you like this kind of stuff, we'll show you more of this kind of stuff. And that's absolutely fine. Occasionally, though, I'll get a Toby Moore has shared so and so. I'm like, and that's introducing. So I think that's why the LinkedIn feed is slightly different, because you get this randomness interjected by people in your feed and your timeline. And it does, I think, try stuff out. With Instagram, I think it's an interesting one because there's so much visual content there. It is just, but once it gets stuck on a theme, it just gets stuck on it. But I think what is really interesting is the fact that people are now moving away from these curated feeds. So they are not trusting these feed places as much. So your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok, it's just nonsense. It's just colorized nonsense. I had someone describe it the other day as toilet theatre, which I thought was an absolutely wonderful way of describing the level of content that's on those platforms. What's really interesting, though, is the trust that people are placing in private communities, such as WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, Signal groups. Those communities are where content sharing is curated by the members, of course, because they're the only people inputting it. And actually, if you think about like where I would now take trusted news from, I would take it from a group of my friends who all share the same values as me, who would pop a news article and go, wow, have you seen this? Do you know what I mean? So I think we're still discovering in our own way, but to me, the trust has shifted away from those AI nonsense engines into actual, let's call it digital human connection still, because it is through those apps. But I think to me, that's really interesting. And that's where the shift is happening over time. So much so that, WhatsApp have, started doing groups and communities and things like this. So, and that they've had to put things like you can't share a post more than 10 times in a chain. So if I share it, you share it. After 10 times, it just stops sharing. You can't share more than 10 times in a go, which is a good thing. Yes. So in terms of discovery, I think there's a whole thing around AI and discoverability in terms of the feeds. I think let's change gear slightly now into how some of these tools are working and some of the things we can do with them, because we could probably be here all afternoon talking about just how feeds work and nerd out on that. But what I thought I'd do is let's have a quick go with some of the things. Let's start with, let me share my screen and we'll go from there. So what I thought I'd do is show you ChatGPT in case you've not seen it before. So ChatGPT is essentially quite a sort of rudimentary interface. So when you get into ChatGPT, you'll get this bit at the top. Now, we're paying for ChatGPT, so I can click on this new model, which is got lots of different funky stuff in it, but you can try it for free. It's often a bit busy, so you can't get in. But if you do stump up the cash, then you can jump in. So one of the things I've been using it for recently is to write a, let's say, 150 word summary of this blog post. So we'll just grab this blog post that I have made here, and you pop it in. Oh, it's obviously said. So this is it summarizing the blog post that I wrote. So it's incredibly quick. And that is actually a really good starting point for, okay, what did it think that my blog post was about? So the other thing you can do is you can say, create a LinkedIn post. And it will then write a post that it knows is in the style of LinkedIn from that and give you some hashtags, which is really powerful. So that's just one example of how I'm using it at the moment. I really like it. The other thing you can do is you can get it to write an email to a customer explaining that we would like to work with them on a project. as an example. Let's just see what it does. Now, this, I think, is a great example of why you have to put a word count in. Because one thing ChatGPT loves to do is it really loves to talk. It bloody loves it. Look how long that is. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's quick. That's the thing I like. It is so fast. So you could just say, make it shorter. And then it will go away and it will try to make that shorter. There you go. So the other thing you can do is you can say, you are a coach who works with leaders. You are friendly and professional. Create 3 questions for someone feeling lost in their work, for example. And what this is called role playing. So you've given it a context of who you want it to write from the perspective of, what their writing style is, and what you want them to then do. And the more detail you can put in, the better. So these, so what have we got here? How would you describe your current work situation, the challenges you're facing? Okay, so it's a fairly generic start. It's not like groundbreaking stuff. What aspects of your work? I mean, the thing is, not being a coach who works with leaders, I don't know whether these questions are massively generic, insulting, or completely irrelevant, but you get the point. The role-playing element here, I think, is really clever. And that is how you can get it to do some different things that you might not be expecting. So if you're trying to think from the perspective of a client, you can get it to be that client. So you can say, you are a leader in charge of a company with 50 people, blah, blah, blah. And then you can just ask it questions and it will respond in that way. So you can basically get it to pretend to be a client in that sense. Yes, Francis.
I'm just wondering what you think might happen if we wanted AI to help people employ our model of the journey of consciousness. So if you wanted AI to write a blog post for somebody who is what we call problem unaware, how would you ask ChatGPT to dial into the correct tone to meet the audience where they were? Or is that not possible? And so is that
I don't think you can get it to use, and like, you couldn't get it to use our journey of consciousness system in that sense. But what you could do is say, write a blog post for someone who is currently doing this, thinking this, feeling this, and explain to them what they can do in order to learn more. And then you could let it go and write the post, and then you can refine it and go from there.
So you still need to have a human involved in prescribing to see ChatGPT what the specifics around the unawareness are, to use it as an example of how AI will never be able to replace humans.
Well, yeah, because otherwise you wouldn't. Otherwise it would just be creating all content all the time. It would just, it's infinite. Just, do you know what I mean? You have to give it some context. You have to give it a container in which to work. Otherwise, it won't. Basically, the more constraints you give it, the better it is. Like the things I've given it are really short prompts. They're not particularly long. What I would say is, if you can get it to role play the client, if you can get it to role play the person that you're writing the blog for, that's a really great way of getting it to be much more specific and contextualized. Otherwise, what you get is really generic stuff. So if you just say, write a blog about, I don't know, economics, 500 words, you'll get an incredibly, you know what I mean? But if you said, write a blog about economics for someone who is doing this, they've done that, they've got experience in this, they've read this book, do that, and then get it to write it, then you get a really interesting article that's a bit different. And obviously you're then going to need to work on it. What you get here is not the finished article, I would say. you then go away and use that as your sort of first rough draft to kind of work on. John Paul.
Yeah, where I slightly disagree with the way you framed it earlier is that it doesn't understand things. It generates things, and it only knows what people have liked and disliked in the past. It doesn't know right or wrong, truth or falsehood.
Very true.
So it generates stuff, and sometimes it's like, yep, that's something interesting, I hadn't thought of that. And sometimes it's total baloney, or just kind of people's common misconceptions about stuff. So you do absolutely need a human in the loop to kind of to say, well, that's useful, that's relevant. So I kind of see it almost like an improv partner. Like I give it information, it's going to come back with something, and there'll be bits there that I go, yes, that's really good, but there's bits there I might want to disregard. So I never want to trust it completely, but it's great for generating new content, new ideas, or testing what I've already got and saying, does that work for this particular person or this type of, people? So in role play, it might be like, if you are talking about, say, business leaders, you can go, is this particularly appealing for business leaders? How could I make it more appealing? It will come back with some suggestions, but you wouldn't necessarily want to go with it all. You just want, you want to sense check everything before you send it out there.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And that is definitely one thing it does sort of state, is that like it isn't good at checking facts, and it's really bad at names. So it will just make up names and never trust a name. If you ask it who wrote this book, the name it gives you is not a fact. It's just the name it thinks would most likely go with that book title. So you can say like, who wrote Harry Potter, and it will just make up a name. Like it doesn't know anything. But what it's doing is it's linking the words together. So it's saying, well, based on the words you've given me, the response that I would normally give is these series of words put together. And it's doing that using a neural network as opposed to a linear process. So quite often when we write computer programs, it's all linear. So it's do this, get that, put this, push that. It's a linear process. But what AI is able to do is to run millions of linear processes out at once, analyze all of the results of those linear processes, and then put them all back together, except it's not using a linear process. It's able to do billions of different permutations of the thing you've asked it to do at the same time. So that's why when it does make stuff up, which they call hallucinating, it is essentially just linking together what it thinks is right. So yeah, you should always check it. And that's why I always say it's that first scratch draft. I heard someone describe it as like asking an intern to do something. You know, it's like an intern in their first week. It's like, it's probably going to get you 50 to 80% of the way there. Great stuff. It's going to save you doing the base level work. And if it's not good enough, there's a little button at the bottom that just says regenerate, which basically just means have another go at that. And sometimes it will give you 2 or 3 to choose from. Depends on what you've asked it to do. So if you ask it to, there's different, I can't remember how I got to it. I got to it the other day, and it gave me like 3 options to scroll through, which was really good. Sophia, did you have a question?
It was actually just something similar to what you said, where in the past, what I've used AI for is writing something myself, but maybe not having that second person to edit it or look over it for me. And I've just entered it and said, rewrite this, just to see what it comes up with or what different words it uses in replacement of my words.
That's
so I find that useful.
That's a really good use of that, actually. I think that can be quite fun if you've got something you're stuck on. You're just like, I like this, but just bang your head against the wall. Throw it in, just say, make this sound more friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
But what might be interesting is to try role playing it, to say, write this for someone who is, and then describe them.
That person.
Yeah. And then say, rewrite this for them. And that might be fascinating to see what comes out.
Yeah.
But if you can give it context as well, so if you can say, if you know it's around 300 words, what you've written, if you tell it, I only want 300 words. Sometimes giving it more constraints makes it better. So you can say, summarize this in 10 words and give it like 2,000 words. That's amazing. Like what it comes back with. I gave it like an entire, because I gave it an entire chapter of my book. Summarize that in 5 words. And the words don't make any sense. It's not a sentence, but it was just like, wow, that's how it's really clever. It's really interesting stuff. So yeah, you can kind of throw all sorts at it. Anjali.
I was actually just linked to that. What I've been using it is giving very specific kind of boundaries. So I kind of say, write 100-word post on this for mothers for Instagram. And it gives me that. And then I say, regenerate this for LinkedIn. And then I do another one, regenerate it for, and then I tweak it myself. So it gives me that base. But what I find really interesting is because I'm giving the potential audience and the potential media, the way it tweaks the format, the emojis, the whether it's bullet points or not, it's brilliant. And that's what I'm like, I can do it, but I don't have the mind space to do it. I have other things to do. So I let that do the base work. And then I change the language to sound like I am speaking, because what I don't like is it feels very generic. It doesn't feel like me. So I get that to do all the hard work in like 20 seconds, and then I spend another 5 minutes tweaking it, and my social posting has become so much more faster. So, and I use it every single day. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's a really clever use of it, actually. And I think it's that thing of it just gets you started, doesn't it? It's doing that sort of base level. Okay, I just need this, but shortened. Or you can, if someone on the internet has a lot of content. So Seth Godin's a really good example, because he's got like 8,500 blog posts or something. I think if you say write in the style of Seth Godin, it is unbelievably good. I don't know if anybody knows the comedian Richard Herring and his emergency questions. So he wrote a load of they're very rude but very funny emergency questions that you use in conversation, and a lot of them are published online. So he got AI to write some emergency questions, and they are unbelievably good. There's a couple that he's just using verbatim. He says, ChatGPT wrote this. It's way better than I could have written it. It's amazing, and they're really funny. So yeah, I'll let you discover that. They are quite good. So you can say in the style of, but remembering what John Paul said, you have to assume that it doesn't know who that person is, because it probably doesn't. It's only if it's got a really large contextualization of that person. So if I say write in the style of me, it just makes it up, because there's not enough of me on the internet. Someone like Seth Godin with thousands and thousands of pages of publicly accessible transcripts and blogs, it's very easy to synthesize. Children's books authors is another one. You can get it to write in the style of the lady who wrote the Gruffalo, that rhyme scheme that she uses. You can say, write me a short story about a insert animal in the style of, and it just does it. My business partner, Ben, he uses this with his kids, and they just write short stories, and then he reads them out at bedtime. So they get a new story in the style of their favorite authors every night, which is both terrifying and inspiring at the same time. Harry.
Yeah, I think being a leadership coach, I was looking at those questions and thinking, yeah, they're a bit generic, but sometimes the best questions are quite simple. You don't have to create these incredibly flowery questions to get good results. But yeah, it did make me think we're probably going to learn a lot about what it is about in-person coaching that actually makes a difference. I'm curious to know whether there are any kind of well-known AI coaching services that are operating now.
There are a few, yes. I've forgotten the name of it. There is a it's like a homework helper. So it doesn't tell you the answer, but it basically gets you to figure it out. So it's like having a private tutor, essentially. So you'd say, what is the answer to this equation? And it will say, well, what is it about the equation that makes it this? And okay, and then, well, so if this and this were divisible, then, and it teaches you how to do it. It's been written by a big educator. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, I will look it up for you. But that is a really interesting way of how it might be useful in the sense of just that sort of rudimentary level thing. But I think that the personal connection obviously is the thing it isn't going to be good at. for a very, very long time.
Yeah, when VR becomes, or if VR does become more kind of, I don't know, popular, and they're able to create, coach avatars who are able to, essentially hold space and be there and kind of, give empathetic nods, and
yeah,
that is going to become a real thing.
I mean,
So
if it gets enough training data and it can learn the structure of the conversation and how they work, then there's no reason why that couldn't happen. But there's no reason why a whole host of other conversations can't be automated in that sense, like GPs, for example. You've got visual analysis of cameras, you've got a series of questions. They ask the same questions every time. Doesn't matter what you've gone in for. It's all the same triage, isn't it? A&E has a triage system. It's on the screen in front of them. They're just clicking through the triage. Obviously, when if you've got a bone sticking out of you, AI isn't going to help. But if you're trying to triage someone who is coming with certain things, then actually there is a system they go through of answers they put in, and it tells them what to do next. So that's not AI, but what I'm saying is all that data can be used to train AI. That's the thing. And I think there's a whole load of interesting things here that could happen. But I think currently it is that level of curiosity that I think is quite good. So I think if we flip that leadership thing round, if you're, rather than saying, give me some questions to ask that person, you could say, what are 3 questions that they would be asking? Because that's maybe that's not inside your head. So you can't immediately compare, well, I wouldn't ask them that, but you might be like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, that's an interesting question. I would not have. And then that's a great blog post right there, isn't it? He's answering that question. So maybe just flipping the like swapping seats, as it were, is the way to use ChatGPT or another tool to kind of give you something of like, how would someone use that? So what I wanted to do, I just thought I'd give you another couple of visual tools I've been using, and then we can come back for some more questions. How does that sound? Francis, do you want to do your question first?
So I was just going to make a really quick point or observation, or share a thought of how AI is going to be so helpful with inclusivity. Just to tell you the story, my dad is going into my son's school to do secret reader next week, and really wanted to read a Hans Christian Andersen book, but needed to do it in 7 minutes, and it was way too complicated, the language for a 5-year-old. So he used AI to say, please write a 7-minute story of blah, blah, blah by Hans Christian Andersen that's appropriate for a 5-year-old. And just to Simon's point, I think in mind of the different learning approaches that we're uncovering simultaneously to AI developing, we can be so much more able to cater for people that might, as Simon says, be asking some things in question styles that we have not thought about ourselves, or need to digest information in a way that we can't even imagine might be more useful for them. So actually, I am really optimistic about the way in which it could facilitate inclusivity. I just wanted to, say that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think that's a really good use of it as well. Yeah, good stuff. So this is another tool I'm using. It's called DeepL, and it has 2 modes, translation. So let's just grab our generic questions, pop those in, and we can translate that into German. I only have rudimentary GCSE German, so I can't tell whether this is any good. I do know from various people who use this in their day-to-day that this is exceptionally good at translation. However, what I use it for is the writing version. So this isn't translating it. You pop your writing in here, and it then suggests other ways that you might improve your sentence structure. Now, this is kind of cheating a little bit because this has already been written by an AI, so it's already taking into account things like spelling and sentence structure. When I write, I'm not. So my writing is fairly slapdash, and I use this tool to make it better. So let's say we don't want the challenges you're facing. Let's say we don't want to use the word challenges. What else could we use? We could use difficulties, and then facing, maybe not facing. We could say confronted. There you go. And it just changes that sentence for you. So you can also change the tense, and it just changes all of the words. So that's really useful. If you've written in different tenses, it corrects all of your tenses for you to make them all the same. It's really good. And then once you're finished, you just do copy and you're done. It's a really good tool. It's free to use. I think you can put like 1,500 characters in on the free version, maybe more. It's pretty good. Like if you just want to do a LinkedIn post checking, I find it really useful. So yes, I would recommend giving that a go. That's a Deep L is a good one. So let's have some visual fun. So there's a couple of these out there. There's one called DALL-E, and this is by OpenAI, who make ChatGPT. So if you've got a ChatGPT login, you can use this. And essentially you can get it to generate you images. The downside of the images, so this is interesting. Someone has said, can you make me a blue orange sliced in half laying on a blue table in front of a blue wall? That image has been created. So let's try that prompt just as an example. So it will now go away and do this. The downside of programs like DALL-E, and there's also one called Midjourney, are that the images it creates are quite low resolution and they're square. And quite often the thing you've asked it to do, draw, is not in the middle. It's really odd. I don't know why it does it, but it does it. So that's quite interesting. We've got, I mean, I think a lot of people click on this example because this is getting really good at this. But yeah, curious though. So those images generated. Now, Adobe, the big boys in the market, have been working on this for some time, and I think it's really good. The caveat here is that you do need a paid Adobe account to use all of these tools. So some of the things that I'm going to show you, you do need. But anyway, let me show you just for fun. So generative fill is basically where you get an image and then you say, can you make a bit of it different? So let's just choose an image of me. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say here, I want you to add something. So why don't we say, let's just draw that in. And I want to add, let's put a camera on a tripod. And it will sit there now. This is always the fun of live demoing. You realize quite how long these things take. So here we go. So it's added there a camera on a tripod. So it's not bad considering it doesn't look that out of place. I did this earlier and it was a lot better at it than this. That's interesting. Let's try it again. Me and my friend Ben, we spent about half an hour on this the other day, and we took a photo of the moon landing, and then we basically put a photography studio around it and a camera and made the whole thing look staged. It was amazingly good at it. Yeah, it's kind of got stuck on the fact that the camera's pointing the wrong way. But there you go. The point is you can generatively fill. You can add things to a photo, but with text, which I think is pretty incredible. The other thing you can do is you can subtract. So if we just put beach and then add, it will take away what was ever. I think there's a picnic table under that photo. Let's see how good this is. This is now baked into Photoshop, so you can just do this in Photoshop. Oh, there we go. Look. Interesting. That's quite a good one. The beach chairs. At first glance, that's not ridiculous. Anyway, it's quite a fun thing. It's baked into Photoshop. So if you do have Photoshop, it's worth trying. You can now drag the image out as well. You can just expand the edges and it fills the edges of the image. So if you've got a portrait photo, you can make it landscape, which is pretty impressive stuff. What I've been using it for, though, is essentially making the images for my blog posts. Rather than trying to use Canva or anything like that. So the one I used the other day was a group of people sat around a campfire wearing headphones. So this is very similar to stuff like DALL-E, where it's now going to go away and create these images. So It's pretty good. I mean, in terms of stock, that is as good as any stock image you would find and pay for. The difference with Firefly is you can then say, well, actually, I want it widescreen. So it will now generate them again. And these images are high res, so they're not tiny squares that go pixelated as soon as you use it. And once it's regenerated these, we can then try again, and you can change all sorts of different things. So that's really, I quite like those. They're quite fun. So let's say you think, I like this one. You can say, keep this one and make me more of the same vibe, like go down that route. Whatever you did there, let's iterate on that, which is quite good fun. And then once it's generated it, you can then do that thing I said, where you can, well, I showed you just now, you can draw over it and say, can you add this to this photo? Can you take this out of this photo? So yeah, they're quite good fun. You could also say photo. So it will do it in the style of a photo rather than illustration, which is quite interesting. The image I did for this event I made in Firefly, and the prompt for that was simply inside an AI mind, and it came up with some amazing stuff. So yeah, that's the photo. I mean, this one here is not far off what you would expect from stock photography. I mean, that's pretty good. Faces it struggles with, so I've given it quite a challenge here. Yeah, see, it's not got the faces right there. But anyway, the image thing I think is really interesting. There are also apps like this. You can do exactly what I've just done, but with video. So you can say, make me a video of a cat skateboarding down a London street with a red phone box in the background and a bus passes halfway through. I want it 30 seconds long, and it will just go and make it. I don't have the money for that subscription, but I have seen someone use it, and it was mind-bogglingly good. Like, it was, yeah, as good as you would expect from a sort of amateur animator could knock up in half a day, and it did it in 2 minutes. You can also put footage in, and you can say, make someone walk behind the person in this video they're wearing, and you put the description in, and then it adds a person. It was, yeah, terrifyingly good. So in terms of those sorts of tools, there's a lot of that kind of stuff coming. And I think it adds a level of creativity to your work that is, it's just good for getting you thinking, I think. Like the image thing, I quite like it because it's just, they're a little bit different. They're a little bit, you know, it's not just the same old photo of an office that we've all seen from Unsplash. It's like every single photo from Unsplash is now unusable because everybody's seen all of them 20 times. Do you know what I mean? And now if you put that on LinkedIn, LinkedIn's like, no, this is just derivative content. Doesn't go anywhere because it's just like, this is the same old nonsense. So having original images in your posts not only, you know, inspires the humans that are looking at your posts, but you also play the AI game of saying, here's something new, here's something you've not seen before, go and have some fun with that. So I think there's a lot to be said for making your own content. And now in terms of making images, there are a lot of tools out there that can help you make some, you know, really creative stuff for your own blogs or posts or marketing materials. There is one that I couldn't get into because it didn't work last time I tried it, but it's basically AI Canva. So you'd say, make me a flyer for my so-and-so, and you just you click about 3 different things, and then, you know, this style, this size, go, and it just does it. But it's all layered in basically like Canva, and you can just drag it all around. So again, if you can't get started with an idea, that could be a great way of doing it. Anya asks, can it create websites? Yes, it can. And it is amazingly good at it. That's the other thing I didn't show you on ChatGPT is you can ask it to code. So you can say, right, make me a web page with a header, a text, blah, 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 and you just describe the web page, and then it turns it into perfectly good, turns it into perfectly passable code. Obviously, if you don't understand code, you are trusting something that has made code, and you're then putting it on your server. So don't trust exactly what it is. But I've tried it on a few different things, and it is really good. The other thing we use it for is you can give it the HTML code of a web page. So if you've got a client website, for example, you can get the code, put that code into ChatGPT, and then say, can you write me code that will adjust this on the website? And it will tell you, take this bit of code, change that, adjust this, do that. It's phenomenally good. So you can say, can you make all these images half as big? Yeah, sure. Here's the code to put in. Delete line 75 and replace it with this. It's yeah, it's very, very powerful stuff. So yes. Sellers asked what the name of that thing is. I'm gonna have to look that up and send it to you, Sal. It was something like Wayfinder, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? It's in here. I'll have to ask someone to remind me of the name of that. Anyway, has anybody got any last minute questions before we go? I realise we're actually at time, so maybe we can have one question before we wrap up. Yes, Elaine.
I was just wondering, do you have like a list of recommendations of AI tools that we can look into and just kind of play around? Because you mentioned quite a few. It would be kind of nice to know, the ones that you recommended, we can kind of play around and look into. Yes,
that is a very good idea. I will make a short blog post with a few in. Yeah, I'll put a few of the ones I've mentioned in today into that post, and I'll add the one that I'm going to look up for Sal and add that in as well.
Will you really do it, or you get AI to do it for you?
Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Oh, that'd be really, that's a much better idea, Ray. Good thinking. Can you write me a list of tools? There is a massive list I found with like 200 on. I'm like, what use is 200? I mean, you almost need an AI to help you choose which AI tool to use at that point. Like, what you want is someone who's sat there and gone, this is absolute crap, I'm not using this. Or someone who's gone, this is amazing. Like the Firefly thing, I think it's just like every time I use it, it gets better and better. It's just, yeah, it's really, really good. I think they probably will release it fully quite soon. I think it'll be I think it will come out for use without the paid Adobe thing. Yes, nice one. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I haven't used Synthesia. No, I haven't. I'll give it a go though. Add it to my list.
I'm excited to give that a go because I think it's what I like about it is it does video, but then you can also get a transcript. It's one of those things where you'll get so many multiple bits of it. I think I can use it in different places. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll let you know how that goes when I use it.
Yeah, that does sound good. I tried 11 Labs, which is a voice synthesizer, and that is really good. There's a Seth Godin podcast about it, which is really, really good. But yeah, that is amazing. You essentially give it 3 minutes of you talking, and then you can basically make you say anything you want. It is phenomenally good. It doesn't do intonation so well. So if you're kind of got a wide range in your talking, it won't work. But if you just have a fairly standard delivery that you use, so I try and keep my videos quite sort of, delivered at the same level. And yeah, you can give it a video and then say, make more of those, please, which it can do. But this Synthesia, I think, is a similar one. So interesting. I'll have a look. Nice one. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Lovely
you.
session. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.